multilateral, multicultural deals that are made, like bilateral agreements with like Japan and the U.S. how that works. So in Japan, it's very clear you are a U.S. citizen. You are not considered Japanese, if you will. So she has no rights to Japan. And again, I can't speak for every single country. I think some of them may be, a little different. For the most part, when you're born overseas, you're basically, considered a born abroad American citizen. You still obviously have to apply and submit for a Social Security card. So, from where we were in Japan, at the time when we were there, you could choose to either be part of Guam or part of Hawaii. So my daughter actually has a Hawaiian passport, even though, a Hawaiian Social Security number. So
that is so neat.
Where you are, right? So, but again, that's one thing that I would tell people not to be worried about. If you find out you're heading there, and of course, the great thing about it is the military, again, especially the Air Force Medicine, does a great job of, before any military member can go overseas, they kind of look at it, right? If you're married, if you already have a child, or in our case, a child is on the way or will be on the way, depending where you go, they got to make sure that family member is going to be taken care of with medical. So, they go through a very in-depth clearance process on the medical side to make sure that there's proper facilities for somebody to give birth or have those kind of things. So, depending where you're at. So, again, loved every minute of it. Those almost 23 years, and definitely want to go back to Japan at some point and show the family kind of where the middle one was born. So that's a trip we have planned sometime in the future.
Well, you guys will make that happen too. I want to backtrack a little bit. Go back to before you joined in the military. Do you come from a family that served in the military at all? What's the familial background?
So for me, I had no. The closest family member I had military service. My uncle had served in Little Rock during Vietnam in the Air Force. He was a military working dog patrolman. So he worked there for a few years. My grandfather's older brother had flown in the Army Air Corps. But beyond that, I didn't really have any military connection. What connected me, if you kind of do the backwards math, graduating academy in 96, I graduated high school in 92. So if everybody remembers 90-91, we had Desert Storm going on.
Yes, sir.
For me, it was a natural calling, and it was something I wanted to do. I was, blessed to have family who, while they didn't understand the military kind of background, fully supported me. Always was there to take care of the decision, make sure I was doing the right thing. So for me, it was just that pull from Desert Storm and wanting to give something back to our country that kind of pulled me into joining the Air Force.
That's huge, and I appreciate you sharing that with us too. I typically like to ask that question because we want to know, what made you decide to join the military? That's a big, big question that a lot of people don't necessarily answer, or they have different answers for it. So we always like to hear what is that answer, and I appreciate you sharing that with us too.
Absolutely.
So you've got 3 girls, Colonel. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Well, and an amazing wife too. So you're technically surrounded by women all the time. So
Absolutely.
When you think about the warfighter that you were in the military, when you're making that transition back home to full-time father now, what's that transition been like? I'm sure that's a really cumbersome process just in itself, but then that's a big adjustment too.
It is, and so I will say again, my wife has just been phenomenal. I will tell you, anybody who is in a long-term relationship, married, anytime you're apart for an extended period of time, there's always kind of a reintegration process that happens because, of course, your wife, and you've been running your own house, your wife's been running her own house, and now you kind of come back and have to figure out where everybody's strengths and weaknesses are and who wants to continue to do this, who wants to clean the house or handle the finances, or if it's a shared responsibility. So, and even just fighting over, space in the closet, right? Who's got how much space?
Absolutely.
So, for me, the transition, and that was one of my, and quite honestly, that was the reason I decided to retire when I did, was because I had spent the last 3 years away from my family. And for me, I just wanted to honor my wife and our marriage and be the father that wasn't just an absent father because he was always off serving somewhere else.
Right.
So I made that decision. 16, 12, and 5-year-old daughters. So each of them have had their own, unique challenges. As probably most kids will tell you, dads hold on too tight. suffocate them a little bit. And maybe I've been a little over suffocation from them a little bit with kind of reintegrating and just being glad to be home and reunited with a family.
Right.
But it's step by step, right? You step back and you go, hey, that 16-year-old was really 13 the last time I was in the house, and things were viewed differently in the world for her. So, you got to appreciate the boundaries and respect those. And so, you work those on each individual basis. So 3 daughters, 3 different personalities, and each have a different way of doing things. So it's just like the military, right? We go into work every day kind of not knowing what to expect.
That's right.
Being a father, big girls are the same way. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. And the management skills that you learned when you were serving in the Air Force, bode pretty well to help you understand the situations that are happening at home too. So you're prepared,
they
sir.
do. Jokingly, they don't like to hear Dad was in charge at one point in his life, and that doesn't fly with a house full of young daughters. So
doesn't fly anymore, huh?
That's equally an adjustment. So, but of course, I never outranked my wife, jokingly. So it was easy to come home and step out of that role and just be a dad.
Oh, I tell everybody all the time. My wife's the general of the house here too. So,
smart man.
So, what 22 years. I mean, what can you say? The accomplishments that you've had, all the things that you've done. When you think back of all that time, is there one specific time or even some instance or a great duty station that you had, just something that just sticks out in your mind that was just something that's great to share? What kind of stories would you have that just sticks out at the top of your mind right now?
So I would start with, and if I can kind of put a little prelude to what I'm going to say, I would say for me, one of the things that I really enjoyed about my military service that really aligned well with how I was, raised by my parents is just servant leadership, which for those that don't know is really, you care about the organization before your own desires and recognition. But more importantly,
right.
you take care and look out for your people. And a lot of people go, well, if you're in charge, a lot of people think the military mentality is, the boss comes in and says, this is the way it's going to be and walks out and doesn't care for the people. I would argue that if you really want to be an effective leader, it's really building the trust and respect with everybody you work with, not just your bosses. It's your colleagues. It's with the folks that are under your charge that are responsible. You're responsible for their care and development. And so I took a lot of great passion in that. And so for me, that sacrifice for others, that really service before self, kind of was a natural progression for me. And not only does it make you a better person, does not only make you somebody that your, colleagues and the airmen that are working with you can trust, but they understand that when those difficult decisions come up, that you're going to have their best interest and the unit's best interest at heart. It may not always coincide, and that's kind of where that trust that you've invested in and developed is critical. But I bring all that up to say, and it's not just because you and I are on the phone, but for those that don't know, as I think I've already mentioned, you and I were deployed together in Kuwait during 2003, so during the Iraq invasion. And one thing that I knew, you were my, youngest, lower ranking of all the people on our team. But one thing that I knew there was going to be a lot of leadership and a lot of success for you in your life was when, if you recall, there was a point kind of after things were starting to kind of cool down and we had kind of taken kind of control of Iraq. We were trying to get things under control. There was an opportunity for us to redeploy and go back home.
Yes,
and
sir.
That was a decision that I gave the team as all of us, that I was going to stay till the very end, but who would be willing to stay with me? And, it meant a lot for me. And that's when I knew, if you will, that old Georgia boy, Josh, had a lot of future. Was when you stepped up and said, I'm willing to stay back. Because, of course, we had all been gone for a while. And while we weren't in direct combat, we were supporting those direct, operators. So we were getting our fair share of, jumping in chem gear. And
that's right.
It was real. It wasn't just playtime. It was a real event. So everybody wanted to get home. But for you to be willing to step up and say, I'll stay back with you, and we'll do everything we need to do to kind of get everything set up and ready to hand off to the next team that comes in here, really spoke volumes about you and your potential to be a great leader. And it certainly made my job a lot easier because I didn't have to force somebody, if you will, to stick around. But for me, I would just say for those folks, that was something that really stuck with me because you were very young at the time, and it showed a lot of great potential in leadership and caring for other people. So, and again, as you're fully aware, being the founder of your organization there, the Veterans for Cannabis. I think you really take that same passion and desire to help others and sacrifice, and that's evident in what you've been doing. And so I really applaud your efforts and applaud all those that are helping along the way with trying to make sure that mission's a success.
Well, absolutely. And, we're closing up here. And the one thing that I will caveat on top of that is you mentioned how you always got in there. And I'll share a short story real quickly. We were filling sandbags in that desert, and you were the only officer out there at the time that was, took our top off and let's work this, let's make this thing happen. Filling those sandbags beside the enlisted people, that's when you talk about earning the respect. You've earned my respect already, but that showed it to everybody that was a part of our group that you were ready to go. Look, Colonel Bishop's, let's get our hands dirty. Let's make it happen. We got a job. Let's accomplish the mission. And boom, your leadership is key, sir. And your ability to just jump in and get the mission done has been why people have followed you your entire career. So can't say thank you enough to you and your service.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. And then, like I said, I know we're running out of time, but I do want to thank everybody. I want to just remind folks, hey, however long you stay in the military, whatever service you're in, it's a family. And I would just ask people, not just because it's the time of year, but now that I'm on the other side, if you will, and I get opportunity to go up to the Veterans Hospital a lot. I know everybody's busy. Everybody's got a lot of things they're looking at, but hey, don't forget to take time to thank those folks that have gone before you. Not just because I'm one that's gone before you, jokingly, but
right.
I get to sit there. I get to sit there and talk to a lot of great people who have amazing stories. And again, I would just tell you,
absolutely,
grow where you're planted. Wherever you're at, try to not only build the team you've got around you, but take the time to reach out and get to know other people. Because I think when you're genuine about caring for other people, you're going to win in the end, no matter what that means. You'll end up winning in the end. So I do appreciate the time I'm setting this up. And anything I can do to help you or anybody in the future, please don't hesitate to contact me.
You got it. And great words from an absolute, even greater man. Lieutenant Colonel Chris Bishop, who is now retired Lieutenant Colonel. Can't say thank you enough for taking the time with us today, sir. Thanks so much for just, spreading your message and helping people understand what it's like to serve in the military. Listeners, thanks so much for joining us here on Honor Across Arms podcast. I'm Joshua Littrell signing off. Colonel Bishop, hope you have a great afternoon, sir, and thank you so much.
Line over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, the drums coming everywhere. So prepare, say a prayer, send the word to beware. We'll be over, we're coming over, and we won't come back till it's over there, over there.